Good evening, everyone. I hope you are all doing well. I know I've been enjoying the wonderful sunshine that we've been having all week in the blue skies. I wish we'd have a little more snow on the ground. There was some snow on the ground and not so much ice, but all that sunshine and the blue skies have been awfully nice. So I hope you've been able to get out and enjoy it. Today, we're going to be talking about courage. So before I say anything, I want you to sit and think about, just take a few 30 seconds, think about when you think courage, what images come to mind? And you can pause the video for a minute if you want. And if you're watching this with someone else, share with each other what images come to mind when you think about courage. If you're watching it on your own, then just think about it for a minute. So when I think about courage, the image that pops into my mind, and I hope this is different from the image that pops into your mind, maybe you live in more progressive times, but is like a white man on a white horse with a sword in his arm, like medieval knight, right? Rushing into battle. Like that's often the image of courage that is portrayed in that word given. But courage is a lot more than that. And so when you picture that knight rushing off into battle, you might think fearless, right? No fear. But in fact, fear is very much a part of courage, because courage is doing something in spite of the fact that you're afraid to do it. It's not being afraid to do it. Think about someone jumping out of an airplane. If they weren't scared at all and they just jumped out anyway, I've never done this before. You know what? It doesn't matter. Everything will be okay. I don't need to check my pack. I'm just going to jump. At least sort of stupid, right? So fear could be a good thing. I have a good friend that's learning to fly, and when we walk, every once in a while she gets all worried about it, saying, "Why am I doing this? I'm never going to be a pilot. I don't. Why am I spending all this money on this? It's just I'm going to kill myself." When she has a bad flight because she gets nervous about it, and that she's going to make a mistake because it's pretty big stakes when you're up there flying a plane, and she's now doing solo flights on her own. So I'm very impressed, and I think it's pretty amazing. But if she didn't have that fear, right, then that would not be a good thing, because of that fear, she studies really hard. She said the other day, it's like, I only studied for 9 hours on a Saturday. Like, I should have studied more. It's like, that's a lot of time studying. And when she does her checks, she gets in the plane, she has a checklist, has to make everything sure is okay. She'll go through it, with a fine-tooth comb, and she makes sure she does the things, because she's a little nervous sometimes when she's flying these planes. So that's a good thing, because it's a big deal to fly a plane. So fear can be our friend, and fear is definitely a part of courage. And even physiologically in our bodies, have you ever heard the term fight or flight? So maybe sometime you're watching a scary movie, or someone says boo and you're startled, your heart starts beating really fast. Well, that is your body's response to what could be a scary situation, right? Called fight or flight. Your body is preparing itself to either fight in that situation or to run really fast. So your heart rate increases, your blood pressure rises, your breathing rate increases. So your body is priming itself for action. So fear is a part of our very being. It's part of our bodies physiologically and part of our emotions. And it's a part of courage. So I'm going to bring up, I thought, when I was thinking about like the image that popped into my mind with courage of that knight, evil knight. I was wondering, I wondered what would happen if I did a Google search for courage, like Google images, to see what comes up. Like, is that what's going to appear? And it's sort of, it didn't. So another symbol, of course, of courage is lions, right? Lions are strong and fearsome and scary. And so there was a lot of some of that imagery. Like, I was glad to see there's actually still more images with men than with women, but there are quite a few with women in here too. So that was good. But it's still very much like all these images, like jumping between cliffs, walking between a line between cliffs, scaling cliffs, right? It's very much what's portrayed here fist in the air. Superhero, right? Power. I think there's very much an association of power with courage, but power doesn't have to be, you don't have to be powerful to have courage. I don't think where there's, I think that's more of that stereotype of the medieval knight with that power. Um, but I think courage doesn't really have to do with power. Fear is good. Power, take it or leave it. So, and so similarly, I looked up, whenever I try to, oh, there it goes, click on the tab, my getting in the way. Okay, so this is what I did. I went to thesaurus.com. The thesaurus is that gives you words that mean the same thing as the word you look up. And I looked up courage. And here are some of the words that came up. So interestingly, some of them did fit that stereotype of the knight, right? Gallantry, valor. What was the other one? That bravery. And these all have something to do with courage, right? I liked that determination. I think determination is a big part of courage, you know. So, and tenacity. Tenacity is holding on to something. So keeping it up, keeping on something even when that's difficult, that takes courage. So I think those are good. But I was dismayed when I saw, look what word came up on thesaurus.com, fearlessness. And I might even send a little email to the company saying, this shouldn't be here. And I wonder actually where the origin of that is. Anyway, it shouldn't, fearlessness, as far as I'm concerned, should not be listed to mean the same thing as courage. Because if we were just talking about it's acting in spite of the fear, that's what courage represents. So fearlessness, it's ridiculous that was listed in there. So it was interesting when I looked it up and I saw that there. I was like, oh, that's all wrong. So, but you see, we have, I think that goes with the larger idea in our society of what courage is. It's that I'm not scared. It's like, no, that's not what it's about. It's acting even though you are scared. So I'm going to read you a story. Stop babbling away here. It's a Japanese story. It's a wisdom tale from Japan, and it's called The Farmer on the Hill. On the top of the hill lived the village curmudgeon. No one knew why the farmer was so ornery and complained all the time, yet he never seemed to have a kind word to say. No one knew why he was so inhospitable, yet he would not even open his door to visitors. No one knew why he lived so isolated at the top of a hill that was difficult to traverse, yet it was rumored that he had moved there after the death of his young son. What everyone did know was that he wanted to be left alone, and alone he was. It was time for the festival. Everyone in the village would be there, except for the farmer at the top of the hill, of course. The women sang, the men told tall tales, and the children played, screaming at the top of their lungs as they ripped and ran, trailing long streamers behind them. It was all that noise that brought the farmer to the top of the hill outside his hut. What's all the commotion? He wondered aloud. Looking down the hill, he could see the village festivities. But it was not the bright sights of the celebration that took his breath away. For, looking beyond the village, out to the nearby sea, the farmer saw a huge wave rolling towards the shore with tremendous speed. You know what he saw? Though he had never seen one before in real life, he knew what it was. It was a tsunami, or a tidal wave. Though his house was safe, being situated high up in the hill as it was, the tsunami was headed straight for the village that lay below. The farmer yelled out a warning, but because of all the festivities, no one could hear him. What to do? So he jumped up and down, waved his arms. But because everyone was having so much fun together, no one saw him jumping up and down, waving his arms. The farmer was frantic. How could he stop the tsunami from drowning the entire village? Suddenly, he knew what to do. Though he might be ornery and inhospitable, he knew the village people were not. He knew they were very kind people. They had always reached out to him with kindness. The farmer did the only thing he could think of to do. With no concern for his own safety, He rushed into his field and lit all his crops on fire. A raging inferno ensued as the dry vegetation quickly wilted and crumbled in the flames. Who saw the flames first? No one knew, perhaps a bright-eyed child or an elder with a nose finely attuned for smoke. Whoever it was, the cry of fire, fire, quickly spread, and all the festivities stopped as the villagers' eyes turned toward the hill. Get buckets of water, we have to save the farmer and his land. And everyone did. All the villagers rushed up the hill with buckets, with blankets, and with no concern for their own safety. They reached the top and doused the last of the flames. By then, all the farmer's crops were destroyed, yet no one from the village drowned in the tsunami, and they all knew why. So that is the story of the farmer on the hill, story from Japan. And so we're talking about courage, right? So who do you think in this story acts courageously? I think everyone did when it comes down to it. So the farmer burning his crops certainly acted with courage. He was scared, right? He was scared for his crops. He was scared that the villagers might not help come and put out the fire. He was scared about the tsunami hitting the village. He took a risk. There was no guarantee that the villagers would help him to put the fire out, especially since he wasn't very kind to them. But his actions showed that he had faith in the goodness of the villagers. So how does that relate to courage? Well, in order to do something that you're scared to do, you have to have faith in yourself, right? You have to believe. You might not be sure you can do it, but you have to have faith that you can and that you can overcome that fear. Or maybe it's a question of having faith and trusting the people around you. You might be scared to do something because you aren't sure how the other people around you will react. Will they come through for you, like the villagers in the story? Or is it a situation where you're afraid they might be mean to you or hurt you or say things about you if it doesn't work out? So to be courageous, you have to have faith in other people and trust them that they're gonna follow through and be on your side. And so having trust in yourself and other people is a big part of being courageous. So suppose the farmer might have been afraid that the villagers wouldn't see the fire, or even if they saw it, they wouldn't be willing to help put it out. But think about it. But he overcame that because he had a greater fear. The greater fear was that the tsunami would hit the village and drown all the villagers. So that greater fear of the tidal wave overrode his fear for his own safety, and that's how he was able to act courageously. So that's one more way fear can relate a great deal to courage. So I want you to think about someone you know or someone you know of that acted courageously. It might have involved someone who spoke up about something or someone who took a physical risk. Think about what fears, so thinking about that person and the way they acted courageously, what fears did they have to push past to take to take that courageous step forward? And what do you think gave them the strength? So maybe the love of the people around them, faith in God, maybe a belief in doing the right thing, knowing in their hearts this was the right thing to do. That could, or maybe knowing that other people were depending to this, to do this courageous act, and that could all give someone the strength to move past those fears and act courageously. So to end, I'm going to share with you a couple of quotations that have to do with courage. The screen again. By a couple of heroic figures in our history. And the first is a quote from Nelson Mandela. And he said, "I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but triumph over it," like we were just talking about, right? The brave man is not one who does not feel afraid, but one who can conquer that fear. And finally, a quote by Martin Luther King Jr. And the end of this you might have heard before. It's somewhat well-known words of his. Courage is an inner resolution to go forward despite obstacles, right? So that obstacle could be fear, it could be something else. It could be people that are stopping you. Cowardice is submissive surrender to circumstances. Courage breeds creativity. Cowardice represses fear and is mastered by it. So cowardice is when you just bury that fear away and just don't do anything about it and let yourself be taken over by it and or ignore it, as opposed to courage when you're sort of standing up to it, acknowledging that fear and going forward anyway. Cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Vanity asks the questions, what is everyone else doing? Is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? There comes a time when we must take a position that is neither safe nor popular, but one must take it because it is right. So I will end there. I think that sort of says it up way better than all my babbling could. That we have Nelson Mandela talking about how courage is not the absence of fear, but it's overcoming it. And Martin Luther King Jr. saying that courage is facing your decisions and stepping forward in a way that you know it is the right thing to do, and having faith that you are doing the right thing despite everything else. So that's it for this evening. I will see you next week. Be kind to yourselves, be kind to others, stay safe, and be courageous.